Issue I aim to address this evening is that of world discrimination and how it hardens hearts of people, hindering them from exercising a life that's pleasing to God. What I pray that you would take away from this speech tonight is that you would be compelled to look inward towards yourselves and work to become better models of that of the life of Christ. God called his children according to his purpose, and he instructs us to work with humility, gentleness, patience, showing tolerance for one another and love. God sees discrimination as a problem, and if God sees this as a problem, we should see it as a problem and take action to walk in love as God commands. Discrimination comes in many forms. Two important documented areas of living is that of employment and health care. But let me ask you first, the first time you experienced discrimination, how did it make you feel? Angry? Vengeful? Hurt? If so, just imagine how many other people are feeling that way right now and have felt that way before in the past. Addressing the issue of discrimination and bringing it to the forefront not only brings about awareness, but it eliminates the excuse of so-called ignorance of this heinous act. I've gained understanding of discrimination because, one, I've lived it, I've seen others discriminated against, I've spoke with people who were discriminated against, and I've done some basic research on it. But if you are a person that loves God, and you are a person that wants to live a life that's pleasing to God, and you have a desire of making God honor a difference to the discriminated, then speaking about it and addressing it head on is an excellent opportunity where you can make a difference in the life of others. Discrimination is real. It's a common problem and has been around since the days of old. Point number one, discrimination is real, comes in many forms, and two documented areas are that of health care and employment. Let's talk about health care. According to an article written by Rebecca Paul, discriminatory attitudes and consistent stigmatization occurs against obese individuals. Of the teachers that were surveyed, 28% said the worst thing that can happen to a person is to become obese. Of the nurses that were surveyed, 24% said they were repulsed by obese people. And guess what? Believe it or not, parents provide less college support for their obese children than they do their thin children as a way to control their weight and control their financial spending. Now let's talk about employment. An article written by Frank J. Kovico talks about attractiveness and appearance discrimination that exists in employment. Appearance encompasses not only looks, but dress, grooming, also physical attractiveness. And guess what? The person that's more physical attractive than the person that's less attractive would be the one to get the job, although the person that's less attractive may be more qualified for the job. But appearance-based discrimination is not illegal in the United States, and it does not violate civil rights. But managers protect themselves against this by hiring on an at-will basis. That means the job is non-contractual. In other words, they can hire you and they can fire you and not have to give a reason for it. The employee has no recourse under this doctrine unless, of course, the appearance-based discrimination is connected to race or color. Only then the employee may have a viable civil rights lawsuit. My second point of discrimination, especially racial discrimination, even in biblical times, hardened hearts and hindered people from living lives that honors God. Paul's letter to the Romans urged them not to discriminate against the Gentiles, claiming that there was no difference between Jews and Gentiles. According to an article written by Peggy Fletcher Stack, the U.S. Congress limited citizenship to free white persons only in 1790. Blacks were not included. Then in 1857, U.S. Supreme Court declared that blacks possessed no rights, which the whites were bound to respect. During the Civil Rights War period of 1861 through 1865, slavery ended in the U.S. for blacks and whites. However, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal facilities for blacks and whites was constitutional until the courts reversed that in 1954, which was 89 years later. Which brings me to my final point. Being non-discriminative, taking action, and walking in love is living a life that honors God. God values our impartiality. He loathes prejudice against employees. He loathes prejudice against people of different races. God values humility. Humility shows, among other ways, when a person limits his or her freedom out of respect for another person's sensitivities. God also values our attempts to liberate the wrongly oppressed through speech. In conclusion, just as I informed, discrimination comes in many forms. The solution to this ever-growing problem is to take a stand against discrimination and not conform to this paradigm, but be transformed by a renewed mind in Christ. This will provide an opportunity, an open door, so to speak, to make a difference in the lives of others. It will also allow you to walk and live a life pleasing and honoring to God. Call to action. Love one another as you love yourselves. Walk in humility. Take a stand against discrimination. And if you see something, say something. Being silent is the same thing as saying nothing.